we're recording.
I just figured it should be your phone.
All right. Yep.
I got him.
My phone says.
Am I?
All right. Are we good? One more minute? Okay. Just a moment.
The other thing, Katie, could we put in a song at the beginning too?
No.
Thought I'd try. That was a joke. Well, professors get a little giddy at the end of the semester. It's just natural.
Okay. All right. Guess we'll give it a go. I'd like to call our Kaysville Business Park Architectural Review Committee meeting to order. The first thing we're going to do is we're talking about the GP Motors used car lot.
Okay. I'll give a quick introduction to that and then introduce you to, well, probably have them introduce themselves with the applicant on this. So just south of Blaine Jensen RV, off of K Drive or 900 West, you can see on the map there in your packet in yellow. GP Motors has the property under contract and is looking to hopefully go in there based on the feedback we get and the process we go through with their proposal. Right now you can kind of see on that map, and if you're familiar with it, just 2 lots down to the south on the street, there it looks like clean dirt. KK Mechanical's got a building that's under construction and essentially complete. GP Motors will be using space in there. Currently he's got a lease arrangement to use that. And as we're looking at considering this lot just up the street. And so being based there within the business park is hoping to get set up as soon as possible, essentially, with the car lot component of the development of the property. It's a pretty unique business model, at least from my experience, where it's not really the public come and peruse, but I think a lot of it's pretty heavy online. He really wants to keep the cars screened and in an enclosed area, and so it's proposed to put up a lot towards the back half of the property, but would ultimately develop the property with an office space. So you can see just at least a concept type building, 2-story office warehouse that might go on there, and then behind that with the fence on the next exhibit would close off the car area. I was thinking with like a black chain link fence with slats to screen it. And you can see here roughly you got about 2 acres of the property, give or take, that's would be where the cars are located, and then the building and the rest of the development would happen in the front. So ultimately it's there's a lot of discretion on these for the Architectural Review Committee in your consideration. Let him detail how things operate and work a little bit further, but just to highlight a couple considerations and questions. One is the use itself. The zone allows it. It's not strictly prohibited. It's probably a pretty low impact productive use for the area. The fencing or architectural aesthetics are items that the council want to consider. There aren't a lot of businesses in the business park that have fenced storage areas up, but there are some. Camping World, for example, has wrought iron type fencing. It's see-through, it's open, you can see their RVs. Mountain States is probably one of the more recent ones that's been done that has the masonry type fence to screen their pipe and other product. As Eakin Automotive technically is part of the business park as well that's got that type of fencing. So the unique component of this and part of the conversation we've had is kind of the temporary nature, at least of the initial installment of the lot. So there may be 2 considerations for the committee. What's okay to begin with and what's okay permanently, long term. I can see a scenario where we don't know all the exact details of the building and the parking area and landscaping and so forth on the front part of the lot, where that fence may be relocated once the property is ultimately developed. Currently, North Davis Sewer District is working on site now with one of their main laterals that comes across the freeway, and they've notified the applicant here that they may have additional work in the near future. And so they kind of have to delay really doing much until North Davis Sewer District is out of the way with some of their projects. And then ultimately the covenants just require that everything be developed within 2.5 years, and they believe they can meet that, and we'll let them speak to that further. I believe the final consideration, just for conversation, and I apologize to the committee, it's not something that I've specifically addressed in the report, and I sprung it on the applicant here kind of last minute just before the meeting as well. As we've had discussions, I've mentioned to them the fenced car area to me it's a product storage area, and that's kind of how Camping World has its items set up and was originally improved, same as the Mountain States plumbing supply. And so they proposed crushed asphalt or road-based type material to be used within that. On further read, as I was preparing just to present this evening, our ordinances actually state for public parking areas or private parking areas, including an open sales lot. I don't know if a fenced-off sales lot qualifies as that, but they're words, and you can help me interpret that and discuss with them that it should be a paved surface within that area. So whether or not that's necessary, and again, whether that would be necessary to begin with, again, in a scenario where a fence might be moved and things might be ripped up to change, would be, I think, worth a conversation with the committee. I've probably spoken enough or too much. It may turn the time over to the applicant and let them come up, and I'd be happy to take questions from the committee as well as you have them.
Okay. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us. My name is Jace Conroe. This is Ty Reese. He's my commercial realtor. So I'm the owner of GP Motor Company. We started back in 2015. I've been in the car industry for about 10 years. A couple of those years were out of the state, in the state of Oregon. And then back down here is actually when I started in 2015. So we were in Layton. That's our original location. Where we're at right now is our original location. We were just leasing. Obviously, as a new business, we didn't want to make too big of a commitment. So we leased, and as we grew, we actually were able to end up leasing acre or so lot right next to our building, which was convenient. Now, as we've continued to grow, we're just outgrowing that space, and we've been looking for somewhere that kind of accommodates. Our model is quite different than most dealerships. With everything kind of becoming online, we've kind of changed that to where we do everything kind of by appointment. We price drive because most people can find everything they want online. They don't need to really go to a dealership anymore and walk around. They just do their searching online, and we found that works most effectively to do our business model. So basically our model is high volume. We make low margins, but we move a high volume. I mean, we've been averaging from 60 to 80 cars a month for the last year to 2 years, which for our little location has been pretty hectic, but we've been able to make it work. As we're now trying to grow, we definitely need something that accommodates more room, especially in the parking and holding vehicles, which is why we're looking at this lot right now. I'm trying to think if there's any other things. We've kind of grown our sales tax revenue for the state up quite a bit. The first year we probably brought in $300,000 to $400,000. Now it's $600,000 plus at least in revenue with the volume of cars we do. So we're trying to continue to grow our business, obviously, and continue our business model. And Kaysville has been a great place. I've actually grew up. My family's from Huntsville area, and so I've always kind of been up in the northern Utah area a big chunk of my life, and I have a lot of friends and family too, and my girlfriend actually lives in Kaysville, so this is kind of the place that I feel like we best suited for my business model, as most of my customers are from Logan or Provo, it seems like, because they're more price-driven type vehicles, where we sell newer vehicles, but they're aggressively priced, so we seem to draw a lot of the newlyweds and people that are going to school, so this is kind of that good middle ground between those two locations. So I'll hand over to Ty, because he's kind of got more of the details of what we're looking to do on the lot. So.
First of all, do you have any questions at this point, or?
Not yet.
Okay.
Thank you.
As you can see on there, we're looking to purchase approximately 3 acres on that south end. Eventually, we're going to have a building in there. I don't know if you can see the outline here, but the North Davis Sewer District. Can I go?
Yeah, if you want to use the laser
Yeah,
tie.
so they're
Right there.
Oh. So they're currently working on this. Let's see. So So they're currently working right in here, and we have discussed with them, you know, their time frame. They are trying to be done initially by sometime in June, but because we are looking to purchase this, they are trying to, well, let me rephrase. They have phase 1 that's supposed to be done by sometime in June. They're going to come back in the next year or so and redo it all again. So this is one of the issues that we're looking at, putting in the cars and then kind of waiting for them to finish so we can actually finish developing the lot and putting the building on and things like that. So that's just kind of one of the situations that we're looking at. I've talked to Steve Lamb with the North Davis Sewer District, and he was saying that they could be done by sometime in the spring of next year. Obviously, it's, you know, the sewer district, and they have a lot of time frames and the construction and stuff like that. So our initial plan is then to house the cars here on the backside, fenced, and then we do have arrangements with, I don't know if you can see that, but to be leased out of that building right here. It's right here. So it would still work very well until we're able to finish developing the property. The sewer district is out, and we can get the building up and everything ready to go.
Great.
Question. So what are you releasing from the building temporarily down below? What were you saying?
2 units.
Oh, there's going to be 2 units from this building that's under construction.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
That's where they're going to have their office space. So just so you can kind of have an idea, someone will call online, or someone will call from a car offline. They'll bring the car around. They'll have one car there. They'll do the appointment. They'll drive around, and you know, they either want the car or they don't. People won't be driving up and just randomly walking through the lot. So all of it's done by appointment. All of it's online. So it makes it really convenient to have this space being done here.
Thank you. That answered my question.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Just on, it's temporary then, I guess, as you're doing in stages, you're going to lease the lower land. And then what do you plan on doing again initially? I know you're waiting on the sewer district to fully develop and put your office in and the cars behind. Are you just going to fence in the area and pavement, or just fence it for now?
Right. So we would do, originally we would do probably, about 1.5 acres of fenced with some kind of rock or crushed concrete. And then when we go back through and develop, we'd put the building on there, we'd put the parking around the building, that kind of a thing.
So road base first, and then after they've done their work, then you can put the permanent, the paved surface after the sewer district is done, correct?
Right, with around the building and stuff. I don't know have you decided about?
I haven't made a decision as far as paving, where we don't have a retail type situation with our business, and I don't plan on changing it to a retail where people are walking around the area.
Okay.
We want to keep the cars kind of secure and hidden. We don't want people just walking wherever.
Okay, so I guess this is what you were referring to, right?
Yeah, so
Kyle?
this is the big discussion. So for sure, what you'll see from 900 West, be asphalt, typical paved
Right.
parking lot here by the building. But this fenced off area
Maybe
is where we've, at
Okay.
least previously,
Well-
didn't discuss the pavement, but it looks like the ordinance, again, if it's an open air sales lot, may necessitate that they do that, unless the committee or ultimately the council maybe interprets that differently than I do. But
From an environmental aspect, wouldn't it be better to not pave it? Do you know?
I agree with you, Mayor. Absolutely.
Of course.
Oh, darn.
Definitely need to take care of the environment. So.
Yeah,
I
that's
think that'd save us a lot on roads.
Yeah, really.
right. Yes, it's true.
Some of our roads are
And
unless purpose.
I know that I've kind of been clear on this, but just to restate the point, it's all going to be behind the fence with the slats, so no one's going to see it. The customers won't walk through it,
Okay,
and the building will be in front. So
all right. So it's not going to be ugly.
No.
All right. Good to know. Yes,
I
sir.
think what would make the difference is, and it was my original thought, that this is storage
Okay.
of product rather than a sales lot.
It's not public.
And if that's the case, then I don't believe it would be required per ordinance that it pave it. But if it is in fact a sales lot, then the ordinance says those should be paved. So it's a little bit fuzzy there. I see it could go both ways. I believe the development could be done in a very tasteful manner with the building, not just the fence, but you're going to have a building screening that area. Perhaps the fencing could be upgraded against the street or something, but it will be pretty much out of sight, out of mind. If there are other problems caused, typically creating pervious surface rather than, or non-pervious surface, such as the chair's getting at, creates a little bit more of a challenge than just leaving it so it'll percolate and that type of thing. But so I think if the committee feels comfortable that this is in fact a product storage area based on the model, it fits the text and language of the ordinance and covenants.
Councilmember Garn.
Thank you.
Committeeman Garn, sorry.
I think I'm okay with it. I guess the only concern I would have, so you're thinking of leaving it unpaved maybe permanently even after you build the building? Is that the idea? Or?
As far as where the fenced area would be and where we'd keep our vehicles, yeah. The answer would be yes to that, just because we don't allow people back there. And even if it was paved, that would be more like inviting for our customers to be like, oh, well, let's just go back there and, you know, whatever. So we've always kind of liked doing like a nice crushed concrete or gravel where it's nice and obviously keeps the vehicles nice and takes care of it, but it's not inviting for people just to walk back there. And
so with that type of a surface, you would not have a problem with dust then, I guess? Or
yeah, so that's why we've done like like on our lot that we have right now, we had like kind of a gravel when we went to the crushed concrete so that you wouldn't have any kind of dust kick up. Obviously, the vehicles are parked in a way where they're not flying through the lot, but that crushed concrete does seem to take that away versus like a road base kind of does kick up more dust, so we won't be doing road base.
And real quickly, as a common sense thing, I mean, it makes sense to me that if people are not going back there, it's not an open lot, then the ordinance probably shouldn't apply. But then I'm not an attorney. Has Nick Mills or anyone reviewed, or do we have a legal opinion on whether?
I've not personally reviewed it with him, so we could, I suppose, assess that. And it's always the, well, for what it's worth, so the interpretation of the ordinance in my mind and the state comes down pretty heavy on this, where there's something that's unclear. Often falls in favor of those applying to develop and build. That said, if you think it's very clear in the opposite direction, and if it merits getting that legal opinion, certainly we could do that prior to making a decision.
Okay. So is the main, the first question is, is it an open air lot versus storage? I think we discussed that. And then the second question is at the timing of when the building will be built, because we require the 5,000 square foot building, but it won't be built initially because of the sewer district issues. Are those the two items at hand?
Yeah, and I think the reason for that, again, I've got pretty good confidence from them, and I believe what they've shown tonight is the building will be there within 2.5 years. Is it okay to do something on the lot before the building comes into play?
Okay.
And it's, again, not specifically prohibited by the covenants of the park, but it's a use question. Is it okay to use it as such? Again, as the committee, that's what you're tasked to approve or not.
Okay, Councilmember Hanson.
So this is just, again, it'll be, I guess when I imagine the building, it'll be just, 3 sides would have been fenced. This will just be a 4-sided, all closed in, your car storage area. And that's the plan with a lock gate, and so people can't get in. Okay. Good.
Okay, I'm fine with this too. I guess one of the concerns until the building is built, I guess you'd be responsible to make sure all the weeds in the front and everything's taken care of and looks decent. And I would think too, if you own a car lot and you're bringing cars out to show people, you wouldn't want a bunch of road base in there and a bunch of dirt on the cars when you bring them around and everything. So I would think just the business sense they'd take care of that.
Can I say one more thing?
Of course.
Although we did see you drive up in that smooth Raptor, are these all 4-wheel drives, or does it vary, the range?
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't do a lot of trucks, funny
Okay.
enough. Mainly cars and SUVs, so
Okay.
kind of the more affordable vehicles. So it's kind of our price range. Newer, but not the super, super expensive ones. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay. So
I think it's been answered,
I
hasn't
think
it?
Ready for a motion?
I think we're ready for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the temporary use of this land for storing of cars, and as you have described it, contingent upon any future buildings or other infrastructure built on the property needs to come before the committee again to be approved once you have details for that.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Committeeman Garn and seconded by Committeeman Page. All in favor. So let's start with Council.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
All right, the motion passes with 4 in the affirmative and 1 abstention. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Right.
much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see. Okay, I will take a motion to adjourn this meeting.
A motion that we adjourn.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that motion is unanimous. All right, and now,
Public hearing.
public hearing. So we'll end that. I'd like to now open the public hearing on an ordinance adjusting the common boundary between Kaysville City and Farmington City and annexing 0.69 acres of real property into Kaysville City.
Just as a quick introduction, so any public that's here to speak on it, make sure we're all thinking the right item. The council reviewed this proposal initially at your last meeting, which is just over a month ago, and approved a resolution to at least consider it. So since then, we've done the noticing required by the state, and including mailing, taxing entities or other affected entities regarding this. It just takes that area in yellow, moves it from Farmington, and would put it into Kaysville City. You can see the street that runs north to south on the west there, 350 East, is a Kaysville City street, and that's the reason for the request is they felt that it made more sense to be serviced by the city that owns the street in front of it. So with that, I'll turn it over to the public.
All right. Would anybody like to speak to this ordinance? Yes, please.
So I'm the property owner there.
Okay, great.
I own all the aggregate area around it too, but again, I think the main reason for moving it is just to have it front 350. The properties to the north, it kind of starts at like 2250 where Fisher's house is, and then right by Dr. Madsen it goes up to like 2300. And because that's 2000 west in Farmington, it would then go back to like a 1958. So the addressing would be fairly confusing for that as well. So the primary reason for annexing it, or at least attempting to annex, is to get the direct access and frontage right there on Kaysville, in addition to the addressing and other issues associated with that. So that's the primary reason.
Okay. And also, we're cooler than they are, right?
That's, yeah.
You forgot that part.
Obviously. Yeah.
All right.
Excuse me, may I have your name?
My name is Ken Stewart.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Did we address, I think, and I know last week we talked about the sidewalk going in there.
Yeah,
Continuing on.
so I own all the way down to 950 and all the way back up around, actually own the creek in that as well. So, yeah, right, that whole area, and actually back behind those homes too. So I had to, when I...
Mayor,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I just think maybe just in a public hearing, we're here
That's
to listen to the
correct.
public
We-
talk about
Sorry.
this.
This is, yeah.
As opposed
I thought
to...
you asked me
fine.
the question.
She
did.
I did.
I'm just going to
She's
clarify
new.
what we're doing.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Probably will always
it's
make a
not.
mistake.
It's not your fault.
Okay.
So anyway, as part of the I subdivided the lot. The reason I subdivided it with Farmington City was to separate the usable portion from the non-usable portion. And as part of that, I agreed to put in curb, gutter, and sidewalk all the way along 350 East, all the way down to 950.
All right. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Stewart. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to this item? All right. Seeing none, I would like to close the public hearing on that.
So moved.
All right. All right. And what's the appropriate? So we'll close. Does it need to be voted on?
I don't think so. I think you can just
Okay.
officially close it.
All right, so it is closed, and we will reconvene in 6 minutes. All right, I'll be right back. I need a better pen. Need one?
With Nick bringing in a big 44 ounce or 52 ounce drink.
Oh, Katie, I brought you like the whole thing.
More ice in it. I don't know.
Yeah, the length of the meeting is the size of.
Apparently they're not good enough for her.
No one ever wants to ride with my fountain.
There's no other reason.
Oh, yeah.
It has to be, I purposely try to keep it to a few sips, you know, so.
Yeah, that's for sure.
When I went to that,
That is funny.
Shit, that's Larry's name tag.
Yeah.
Larry doesn't have
so they were like, I don't know.
So,
And I was running it.
it's been a day.
And I just didn't think to go in there, so I came.
Sorry, Larry.
And I like being Larry for a day. Come on now. Yeah, where is it?
Was I Lorraine?
My bad.
Is it?
That was
All
Ellen.
right.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
No,
I can be Jerry.
Maybe we'll just do
Lorraine
it.
keeps
Oh
Tic
my
Tacs
gosh,
in
sorry.
here.
Rearrange
But yeah,
just a little
those
bit.
were Larry's, but he didn't eat them. He doesn't like them.
I think we should put these out, and then if, since we're raising taxes maybe.
Thank
Although I
you
like
very
this
much.
See, Gary did it,
Anyways,
And we are still recording everybody, just so you know, which is not both leaves, okay?
and Shane's saying, "Oh yeah, we're gonna work out here today," and Katie goes, "Don't wait for Michelle. We'll be here forever." I walk in, and I'm like, "Hey, Katie, say that to my face." And everyone was like, "Oh man," it was funny. So we spiced it just a little bit. Pretty funny.
Did she see you or she just teased you?
No, she hadn't. But I always like when we did Kaysville University, I would show up like right exactly on time, right? Because, and I would always just like make it funny. I don't know. Say it to my face, Katie. It was funny. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
How's the springtime?
Baseball.
That's what I meant. Baseball season is like. Aren't all your boys in baseball?
Yeah. Yeah, just wait.
Oh my gosh.
How old's your oldest again?
We're in Girl Scouts.
So you got one boy.
One boy. Oh, don't worry. It's 5. Signed up for T-ball. And his mom signed his dad up to be the coach. Without him knowing.
Dad's like,
Oh, okay. Sounds good.
T-ball.
He's like, I don't know how to do that. I'm like, neither do I. We have YouTube. I'm sure we can figure it out.
There's gotta be a tutorial.
Right? I think, like, if the thing, and you hit it. T-ball's the cutest. My 2 girls played it too. It's adorable. They're the only girls like in the whole league. It's awesome. But then they didn't want to continue. I think softball's
It's adorable, like the first 2 games. It's like,
It's so true. I'm like, when are the treats coming? When can we get out of here? Oh, no thank you.
Thanks, so. Appreciate it. How you doing? Good, man.
We need to bring better.
You too.
It's not that I'm opposed to it, but yeah, so he's doing that. And then we do music. So they're both piano, violin, ukulele. So different type of music.
We had guitar, drums, but kind of.
Oh, was that bugging you? Yeah. But look how cool it is. Right? It's the long one.
Her OCD was like,
Yeah. It was like, well, it was like calling too. Yeah. I would have been on time.
Right here. Okay, we're gonna have closed session. Is that?
AM. Yeah. Like in the morning.
AM.
Jolly Rancher?
Right?
Do we know what for, or do we?
Yes, we do.
Oh, okay.
We're recording?
Yep.
Just this.
oh,
This.
Sorry.
these or
I have an extra, not mics, just
But unless he goes YouTube.
oh, just
We're
video,
talking about
video,
different
not audio.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay.
We need different chairs.
Okay, one day.
One day.
I can't take it.
Okay.
Go T-ball.
Go T-ball. We love all the games, not just the first 2.
Yeah. Oh my God. This is fun. Okay.
How many times are you hoping I would have the restaurant? 4-hour meeting. Did you have a, we should do like time of when we think we'll be out and how many times after.
Hey, I'm volunteering
Is
again.
it also like
At
the over-under's 4?
place.
Taking the under. Well,
Which is all the place. You know, no, watch a show.
This is true.
But it's, yeah. Are you calling this year?
All right.
Yeah, we got this.
Oh, good.
Okay. I think we're just about ready to start again.
There's some good ones there. I like it.
Oh, are we ready? Yeah.
Just about, yep. As soon as Councilmember Hanson gets up here. I know, it's usually her. What?
You're on.
Look at that. Okay. I would like to call the April 19th, 2018 City Council meeting to order. First, we will have our opening provided by Councilmember Larry Page.
Our Father in heaven, we're so grateful that we have this opportunity and blessing of being here and talking about the different aspects of our government, for the great blessing that this country gives us and the Constitution. We're grateful for especially the last couple of weeks where we had some situations in our city where people could have been hurt very badly, that for thy protection, and especially our police, and we're so appreciative of that. We ask thee that we'd be able to make good decisions here this night. It will be attentive to the citizens, as well as the debate and the discussion that will be provided here this night. We're grateful for all thou hast done for this city and for the great blessings we have of living here. And we pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. Audience, please rise. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. I just want to make sure folks understand, if you would like to speak in our public comment period when we're talking about action items, if you want to speak, you need to sign up. The sign-up sheets are out on the table outside. Also, if you are going to want to speak in a public comment period that's at the end of the meeting, please also sign up for that. So each person gets 3 minutes, and we love to hear from you. All right. Right now, we are going to turn the time over to Nick Mills, our city attorney, who's going to give us some training.
Thank you, Mayor Witt, members of the City Council. It's good to be with you tonight. I know that when you looked at this heavy agenda, this was certainly the shining star that you all looked forward to. Open and Public Meetings Act is an annual required training that all public bodies in this state are required to undergo. I think it's a good kind of refresher on what we do here as a city council, what you do here as a city council. And it's not a difficult code, not a difficult aspect of the code to understand and to apply, but it's good to have a reminder. So if we'll go to the next slide. I want to start by talking a little bit about the policy behind the Open and Public Meetings Act. And this is actually codified, which is unique in the code. As you look through the code, there isn't a policy reason for why we don't allow theft or why we have a speed limit or whatever. But there is here for the Open and Public Meetings Act. And if you only remember a couple things, or if you only remember one thing from this training, if you remember the policy declaration here, you'll be on pretty safe ground. So the legislature declared that the policy of public bodies in the state is that they exist to aid in the conducting of the people's business. And when they're conducting the people's business, they should do that under subsection 2 in 2 ways. First, they should take their actions openly, and second, they should conduct their deliberations openly. Now, there's other ways that you could potentially argue that an organization should be run, but this is the policy and this is the declaration of the state legislature. This is what they have elected for public bodies to abide by. If we could go ahead 2 slides. Yep, thank you. So this is as complex, I think, as we need to make the Open and Public Meetings Act. This comes right from 52.4201. It says a meeting is open to the public unless closed. That's it. Now, in typical lawyer way, we've defined some of these terms. So before we get on to that, I just want to talk a little bit about what it means to be open. A meeting needs to be open, and that doesn't mean that the public gets the opportunity, as of right, to present anything, to speak in any way, but they get to be here to watch the business of the City Council be conducted. Now, certainly the City Council could allow them to speak, and there are certain actions that the City Council takes or that the public body takes that requires that they conduct a public hearing. But those are different requirements of different statutes. And here, the Open and Public Meetings Act merely requires that you conduct your meeting open. We could go back to that. Yeah, thank you. So, in classic, I guess, law or code function, they've taken words that we usually have a colloquial meaning for, and they've given them specific definitions. For example, if Councilmember Barber called up another council member and said, hey, I'd like to kind of share my thoughts on this. Can I get together later? She might tell her family, oh, I'm meeting with Councilmember Hanson later today. And that is what we would typically call a meeting, but that's not a meeting as far as the Open and Public Meetings Act is concerned. A meeting means the convening of a public body with a quorum present. Quorum is a majority, simple majority. And it doesn't matter what you call this. It can be called a workshop. You can call it whatever you will. But if the quorum's present and you're going to do one of 3 things, you're going to discuss, you're going to receive comments from the public about, or you're going to act upon a matter which you have jurisdiction or authority to do that, to act upon, then that's a meeting. So they don't need to provide the public notice of that meeting because it's not a meeting under the code. There's one nice aspect of this that turns this code, or changes it, I guess, from a restraining order in a sense into a workable code, and that means that if you're at the grocery store or you're at a social function and you see somebody by chance, you all happen to be at Bowman's or you all happen to be at Smith's or at Maverick or whatever, and it's just a chance gathering, that's not a meeting. Now, that's hard to justify if it's a chance meeting every Tuesday right before this meeting. But a true chance meeting is not a true chance gathering is not a meeting. And if somebody's son or daughter got married and you invited the rest of the council to come to the reception or whatever, and it was a social event only, that would also not be a meeting. Can we go one more? So in meeting, back one. So in meeting, it says that the public body has to be convened. And the convening means the calling together of the public body by one that's authorized to do so. So occasionally, you'll go to a League of Cities and Towns meeting, or you'll be, I can imagine maybe the county commission has a meeting and you all are invited to go there to receive some award or to be recognized in some way. That's also not a public meeting, and Kaysville City would not have to notice that up because the meeting wasn't called or convened by someone that was authorized to do so. The League of Cities and Towns couldn't dictate that this body held a meeting. The county commission couldn't dictate that this body held a meeting. So there are some exceptions to this. Go to the last slide. I want to talk. I've got some questions about this. So before I ended, I wanted to talk a little bit about electronic messages. The code specifically says that that the code is not supposed to be restricted. If you're going to send an electronic message, the code doesn't restrict that. There are two areas where it probably is restricted or the code is gray on this, and that is if you're in a public meeting. So right now, you shouldn't have your cell phone out texting the other members of the council while you're discussing it, and also discussing it through text message or email or whatever. And then also, the code is kind of gray on whether you could deliberate on these things. I think the clearest way to read this is to recognize that this is a great way to distribute information. If there was a public works event that was coming up, or a Parks and Rec or a police department event that was coming up, and you wanted to distribute that information to the other members of the council, if you read an interesting article that you thought was applicable to something the council was discussing and you wanted to share that, you don't need to send 5 different emails. You can just send one email. I want to end, unless you have questions, with a little discussion of enforcement. If the Open and Public Meetings Act is violated knowingly and intentionally, it's a Class B misdemeanor. It could be punishable by up to 180 days in jail and $1,000 fine. As long as, I think this is, maybe take some comfort in it, as long as I think Shane or myself or another city official is there and they've kind of directing the meeting or you're giving advice from them, I think you as the public body are insulated from that, particularly if I'm there and you're acting under my advice. I think you're insulated from that knowing and intentionally violating the act, because I think the law would presume that I would stop that from happening if it was a violation. And then if there was a violation, there's a remedy. So there's a classic case from central Utah where I believe they appointed, the city council met, they didn't notice the meeting, they kind of met in closed doors, and they appointed a sheriff or a police chief. And somebody in the community wasn't very happy about that. They thought they should be the police chief. So they filed a lawsuit against the city. And the remedy is that the city has to do a redo. They have to do it over again. In this case, by the time the case got to court, the city council had met, they'd noticed the meeting, they appointed the same guy to be the police chief, and the court said, hey, even though they screwed it up the first time, they fixed their mistake, they noticed it up, so there's no error there. So I really think it's kind of a no-brainer part of the code. It's important to remember that you guys are acting as to affect the public's business, and that the public has a right, because it's their business, to see what's going on and to see, not necessarily to vote on that because you've been elected to do that, but to have the ability to watch and see how that decision is made and to see who favors it or who opposes it. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Okay.
No questions?
You may ask a question if you would like. Councilmember Adams.
So, concerning, let's say, email communications. So, can a council discuss and deliberate through email with a quorum in that email group? Because I've studied this to a great extent somewhat, and I don't think the law is fuzzy there. I think it's absolutely a no, so I'm not being pushy with you.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that the code, I think that it's always best practice to avoid deliberating, discussing those things, but I think that doesn't mean that you can't send an email to voice your opinion. I think once that starts to become a dialogue, that's when you get into problematic.
So if it becomes like, hey, what are we going to do about this matter? I feel this way. What are you thinking? Because we need to do something about this matter. Okay.
Right.
Then, can we call each other individually to work around, if there's a topic at hand, can we call one another individually and kind of work around and circumvent? Let me reword this. If there's a topic we want to discuss and you can't discuss it with all 5 on a conference call, can we just break that down and dilute it and call each person one at a time concerning the same topic?
Yeah, nothing in the code prohibits you from establishing one-on-one communication with every member to gauge their opinion on it, to discuss it with them. And as long as you kept those meetings one-on-one, there's no quorum present, so there's no meeting occurring, you could certainly gauge the pulse of the city council that way.
So how would you feel about like an incomplete quorum? Let's say somebody called all but one or two. Let's just say somebody called the majority to solicit, a consensus opinion on a subject, and one or two not.
Well, once there's a simple majority, that's a quorum present, so in this case, you'd have to call two, one at a time.
I'm saying if somebody were to do that, to work around, and because you're trying to champion an issue and you're trying to win an issue, so you just do enough to get the ones that you think will go with you on board, and you don't call the others, how would you feel about that?
As long as the communication was one-on-one, there's nothing in the code that prohibits that.
Okay, that's all. Well, on that topic, when you say that we should do things openly, I love this because remember David Church always said transparency over efficiency, always. He kind of tried to program that into all of us as a default notion that we should always go that route. If we're ever in doubt on anything or whatever, it should always be transparency over efficiency, which I love that. It's stuck with me. So is that really kind of like all things that we do? If there's even a hair or hint of a question like, this is really kind of a public matter, should we just throw it on the agenda and let it flush out that way? Or?
Well, the code says that all meetings should be open unless closed. So there's a number of reasons you can close the meeting, but if it's not one of those specific listed reasons, then the meeting should be open. The public should be allowed to come and observe what's happening.
I think you're misunderstanding me. What I'm getting at is not the difference between public or private and open meetings. The distinction is that, where do we kind of find that fine line of what should be even on the agenda or in a private meeting at all, and what business should be brought from, the city side of this building over to here. There's a lot of things that seem to not make it to our agenda that just happen. So where would you kind of say we should try and focus our energy on drawing that line?
So I think that's a policy and a city code question that's separate from the Open and Public Meetings Act. If the city council is going to take action on something as defined by their code or required by state statute, then unless it's one of those specific things, it should be an open meeting. Now, how that policy decision is made, for example, the city council just approved that the planning commission would approve final plats. I believe that code passed last time. That's a policy decision that the city council can make. So what comes over from the staff side to the council is a policy level decision and a legislative decision that this body can make. It's not really an Open and Public Meetings Act question.
Just one last one. So if there's an area in something we're doing where the policy doesn't, our current and existing policies don't really define what we should actually do in that situation, what would a suggestion be from you? One that I would suggest would be that when in doubt, we just throw it on the agenda as a default. So if policy doesn't really define if we've, how to tackle a certain decision or what to do in a certain scenario, what would you recommend to us and to management that we do?
Yeah, that's such a fact-intensive inquiry that it'd just be a case-by-case basis, I think. If you have a specific example, I could chat with you, after the meeting, but certain items are just not included in the policy, and they're so low level that staff can do that. Certain decisions are policy level decisions that should come over here. So,
and if I may, I had a question. So if we as a council decided that, we're going to just start a new tradition that after our city council meeting, we're going to go over to Dillon's and we're going to get a Diet Coke. Should we notice that on our agenda that council may be meeting over to have a Diet Coke at Dillon's? What do you think?
If it's merely a social gathering, the code doesn't require it. I find, though, I would suggest that if that was going to be a common practice, that you would notice it up, because frequently, just human nature, you end up discussing, deliberating to some extent the issues you discussed in the meeting. If after the meeting on a rare occasion you said, hey, I'm going to stop at Dillon's, and a couple council members said, oh yeah, that sounds great, I think that's different than a standing practice.
And if you're discussing things of a political but not applicable nature, like I would say, what if we're talking about eminent domain being used over in Farmington? You know, that although we're discussing something that at some point might be applicable in our city, it isn't right now. It's still okay to talk about, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it would fall under the definition of meeting in that case, because at that point, it's a theoretical, hypothetical situation. The code doesn't require that you discuss, anything that could possibly happen in the city. It's just if you're going to take action on something that's happening in the city, you're going to discuss something that you have jurisdiction or authority over, a real situation, then that should be noticed up.
That's great.
Mayor, may I ask one?
Councilmember Hanson.
Just a clarification. I know you said this, but I was just thinking on things and wasn't hearing everything you said. If I have an opinion on something and I want to email the mayor and the other 4 council members just to express my opinion, is that okay?
Yes.
It's just when the dialogue, if it starts to come back, then I have to say, whoa, that was, do I do that? Just say, that wasn't my intention to get responses. I just want to let you know how I felt.
Yeah, I think the best way to handle electronic communication is just to use it to distribute information, and probably as a safe rule of thumb, although it's not required by the law, safe rule of thumb is probably just don't reply to those ever. That way you're not engaging in a dialogue or a discussion, and you can, if you have a difference of opinion, you can go craft your own email.
And I could preempt that, like, I don't expect a response, but I want to let you know how I feel about said issue.
Sure.
And that's okay, as long as the dialogue's not going back and forth. Okay.
Right, as long as you're just distributing information.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can get into a gray area there if you're trying to circumvent or bypass the code. So you send an email, and then 2 minutes later, Councilmember Page sends an email, and then 2 minutes later, a separate email comes from Councilmember Garn, and then Mayor Witt. And yeah, I mean, if it's all close in time, then you could, I mean, you're not replying or anything like that. But if you're discussing it and you're trying to get around it, that could be a violation as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I have to say that I think this council does a really good job about not going back and forth and on email. So I appreciate that. I haven't seen any of that. So good job. Good job. All right. I think we budgeted 20 minutes for this. Anything else from council members? All right. Thank you so much. All right. Now we have declaration of conflicts of interest. Does anybody have any conflict of interest with anything on the agenda this evening? Okay. Thank you. I would now, we're moving on to consent items. Does anybody want to remove anything from the consent agenda to speak to separately?
I had one. The Planning Commission appointment process.
So E.
Yes,
all right.
thank you.
Okay.
And G and H.
Okay. All right. Okay. I would entertain a motion to pass the consent agenda minus E, G, and H.
Can I pull off I too?
Yes. Okay. I need a motion.
I'll motion that we approve the consent items minus the said line items.
I'll second.
Okay. It has been moved by Councilmember Adams, seconded by Councilmember Barber. Let's start with Councilmember Page.
Yeah, aye.
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 Thank you. All right, motion passes 5-0. Right. Yes, there's 5 of us. Sorry. Okay, let's start with E. Okay, Councilmember Barber.
My question, sorry, I'm trying to pull it up really fast, was on, so they are going to submit their applications for, and this is for Planning Commission seats, just so everyone everyone knows. So they submit their applications, and then the interview process, it stated it would be the mayor wit and the liaison.
Yes.
And then it would be voted on by the council. So I just wondered what the process is. The council can be informed about the recommendations and who applied, where we're voting, what kind of information will we be getting, and how involved will we be?
So how I've seen it done in the past, what happens is ultimately it's the mayor's decision who to appoint, right? And I am going to involve the liaison to Planning Commission to help me do the interviews. And then after that, what we'll do is I will present the names to you and kind of their qualifications so that you'll know.
As a recommendation?
As a recommendation,
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And
like a little bit about them and why you're making that recommendation. And then we just vote for every single one, or vote to?
We can, it will be, this time it will be two individuals.
Okay.
So if you would like, we could do it person by person.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Well, it may actually.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Of course,
and then do we just,
Hanson.
when the names are put forward, so do we see all the candidates or some of them get screened out?
That's up to me as mayor. So I will present to you who I've selected. Yeah. So this is one of those areas where it's at the mayor's discretion. So, yeah.
Could we? Sure. Sorry.
Are you finished?
Let me just.
Yeah.
When we see, are you only going to bring two forward? That's, I guess, my other question. So you
I intend to only bring two names forward.
And we vote up or down on that.
And if you are not comfortable with the names that I bring forward, then I will go back and look at the other applicants.
Okay. Thank you.
I find that to be a bit intimidating for us, where it's kind of like if we say no, we're feeling like we're kind of saying no to the individual.
Right.
And we don't have a pool. I like the style of an appointment that the state has set up if there's a vacancy on this body, to where all the applicants come and they have a 2-minute interview session. You remember from a few years ago. I really liked that, and I think that would really address James's concern also, that we could just have a 2-minute session and then kind of start to boil it down from there. That way there's no way in going forward that anyone, and this could bolster it up of ever coming back against you, of saying, well, she picked her friends.
Yeah.
And so I think with your goals and parameters of creating trust in the community, which is awesome, I think that's a way that maybe just a blind spot that perhaps could help avoid that. I'd be willing to take the time to kind of follow that format in a meeting, take a block out an hour and get a bio on 10 people and what their vision is of the city and all that kind of stuff.
I did consider that because when I served on council before in Colorado, that's how we did it. So we had many boards and commissions.
This way? Or?
Yeah, the way that you're suggesting. So we had a Saturday, we divvied up into twos, and everybody came through and got interviewed by all the council members, and then we met together, and then we discussed it, and it ended up being really political. Instead of, and I understand your point, that you're saying that this would save me that the appearance of being political, but I've tried it that way, and it ended up being very political that way.
Well, the state parameters are that that's how we have to do it for this body, and that's
no, not according to our ordinance.
I think he's
saying
for
our body.
Yes.
For our body, we have to do it this way. That's state law now.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we could go above and beyond and be exemplary in that avenue, and let the candidate, not a big Saturday all-day affair, just the same way that it was here when the appointment process was going through the city council, to where everybody has a 2-minute ordeal, and we could figure out some sort of a program as to how we would narrow that down.
Sure. That might be intimidating as well. So, yes, Councilmember Garn.
Yeah, just a different perspective. I favor the advise and consent role, and I'm a big fan of separation of powers. The mayor represents the executive branch, although many of the mayor's powers have been delegated to a city manager in our weak mayor form in Kaysville. Some larger cities have a strong mayor form where the mayor retains the executive authority and the council is a legislative branch. So I do favor that. I mean, you could certainly make an argument the other way, but I think on a planning commission, what you're looking for is some people who have experience or could be technical experts on, it's not a political process at all. Planning Commission is not supposed to be, public clamor is not supposed to be any part of it. It's supposed to be based on interpretation of the statutes and rules of the city and whether the application applies for that. So I would prefer to remove the political realm out of it. However, as a council member, if I felt in my consent role, I would vote no. I would certainly talk with the mayor and say, I don't know that this candidate really meets the expectations that I would have for a planning commission. So there's nothing to prevent a council member from, but I really think that's how it should be looked at, not, from a political perspective of this planning commissioner's promise to do a certain development or promise to do a certain thing a certain way within the city and has biases and has conflicts of interest before even coming in. I don't favor that, and I think if you go to the council or selection by committee, you run the risk of that occurring. So I would prefer to leave it the way it is.
Can we draw a distinction in that? Because I like the tone of that. Is
May-
he like
may
on
I-
that side? I was unclear.
Okay. Councilmember Adams, you would like to make a point?
Thank you, Mayor Witt.
Yes.
Could we draw a distinction? So are you favoring the prescribed method, Jake, or are you favoring the method that we're discussing? The method that is proposed by the mayor?
No, I'm favoring the advise and consent role, just like the executive branch in Congress, where the president appoints and the Congress consents by vote, rather than
Would you mind breaking
Congress
that down into
selecting.
layman's terms?
So I don't know
Are
whether
you-
it's really appropriate to give a history
All right.
lesson on
And I'm going to stop
Constitution.
right here.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going back and forth. I want to hear Councilmember Garn answer, and then I want to take questions from somebody else, okay? So, Councilmember Garn, if you want to respond.
Yeah, that's my only comment. I would like to leave it the way it is. In other words, the mayor selects an individual that in this case she would like to appoint, and then the council votes on whether they accept that appointment or not.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? I tend to favor this side of the room because there's more council members over there. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, we're quiet over here.
Councilmember Page.
Yeah, I'm actually in favor of leaving it the way it is, and the reason is there can be politics involved in this, but I mean it's done at the federal level, it's done at the state level that way, and I just think it's a good way because when being in on some of these interview process. I really like the way that Mayor Hyatt did it. We discussed them and then we talked about them, but ultimately it's the mayor's decision. And I mean the mayor, there's very few things that the mayor can, since they're not a part of the voting on issues. I just don't think that I would like to see that position taken away from the mayor. I just think that there's some great decisions made and a lot of thought put behind it, and still the council has that opportunity to question it.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, Councilmember Hanson?
No.
Okay. All right. I think I would like to entertain a motion on this at this point.
Can I make one last comment?
Yes.
I think I would feel comfortable as long as we had all the applicants, we were able to review them as like part of the packet.
Okay.
And we see your recommendation.
Okay. So just include all the applications.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And then we can look at them all, including your recommendation.
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
All right. Councilmember Adams.
Just a distinction. So if we're talking about, Jake, I appreciate what you're saying, but if we're talking about, the separations here, we do have a voting member of this body on your panel, and that would be Councilmember Page. And in his comments and words, he just expressed of saying he's uncomfortable having voting members, but he's comfortable having you. Should we entertain and think about not having a voting member on your committee then?
I appreciate, as he is the liaison, he watches and he doesn't participate, but he watches, and I think he has some good feedback on what we might be lacking on the Planning Commission and maybe some areas that we need to keep in mind. So I think, but I think I'm going to hold with what we got, but we will include the applications in the packet when it's time to appoint. I would now entertain a motion including that bit. Anyone?
Go ahead. Oh, okay. I'd make a motion that we approve the Planning Commission appointment process with the exemption of including all applicants in the packet that week.
Thank you. And a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember Barber and seconded by Councilmember Page. Councilmember Garn.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes 4-1. Okay, let's go to G. So approval of Public Works vehicle purchase. Councilmember Adams, I believe.
G and H we could simply combine, but I guess we could kind of break them out because of this distinction in their budgets. G, and my reasoning is the same somewhat for both. It's just a matter of I haven't really seen the need. I don't feel like I'm sold on the need for these vehicles. We just spent $90,000 in the Public Works Department for a brand new F4 or 550 vehicle. And I would say even in parks, I don't know if I'm sold on the need yet there. And the reason why is just due to the fact that roads, we got some big, obviously some big stuff going on there, and I just hate to see anything kind of go into a place where can we live without it for now. And, you know, parks where it's a different category, but they do have some unrestricted monies in their budgeting too. I believe this vehicle would come from that. And those monies could be, in an open environment, shifted over to the Public Works Department to be spent on roads. So I'd like to be a little more sold on the need and why. And the existing fleet be sold on why it's not adequate.
Okay, would you like to make a motion to that effect?
I don't want to curb anyone, but I'd love to.
No, go ahead.
So I motion at this time that we deny the purchase of these vehicles at this point in time until we have a further understanding and analysis. We have a budget retreat this weekend. Maybe we could talk about it then, and then we revisit the issue. So currently a motion that we deny the purchase of these two vehicles tonight.
Is there a second to that?
Can I just go, just a point of clarification?
No, first we have to have a second. Motion fails for the lack of a second. Councilmember Hanson.
Do we, when we pull this off the consent item, does it become a work item or action item, I mean?
No, it doesn't. So, but it does not become a work item. So what we're doing, we pull it off to discuss generally, but we're not going to have a public hearing or anything.
Could we motion to make it a work item? Is that what we do?
To make it an action item, or
what?
So
I'm not sure.
Would you like to put this as a work item? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'd like to put it action item where we could ask questions of the.
You can ask questions right now if you would like.
So I think, Councilmember Hanson, I think this falls into a gray area where it's still a consent item. Mm-hmm. It's not a full-blown action item. Mm-hmm. It's still a consent item. You're free to ask questions at this point. If the council needs further information, you could table the item, you could approve it or deny it.
I guess my question is anybody here that can represent and just discuss?
We have Josh here.
Discuss
Josh,
the needs for those
forward?
two vehicles.
Yeah, Josh is here. Just I would remind you that this has been vetted at the budget discussion for fiscal year 18 that we're in. So this has been appropriated by the council previously, and the reason you're seeing it again is because it's over the $25,000 threshold. So that's why it's a consent item and not an action item or anything like that. I realize that two of you weren't here for that, and
right.
I'm sure we're happy to answer questions and answer whatever you'd like to know. But the reason why it's on a consent and not action is we're not trying to convince you of it again. We've kind of done that already.
Okay. Is that comfortable? Okay. All right. I would entertain a motion first on G and then on H. Anyone? The approval of Public Works vehicle purchase?
I move to approve the purchase of a vehicle for Public Works, and also taken together with item G, a vehicle for Parks and Recreation Department.
Okay. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded for both G and H. All right, let's vote. Councilmember Barber.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
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 All right, motion passes 4-1. All right, and then I. So I think it was Councilmember Hanson who had a question on this.
Just a question on if this was just the forms on this. They looked a little bit weird.
Is it like technical weird?
Not technical weird, just lines crossed out and filled in by hand. Down on the POs.
Find it.
Am I seeing it right?
Yeah.
Can you pull it up on the agenda here?
I see what you're looking at, and I think this is something we can get some clarification from Gary. This is, I don't know if it's clear in there, but this is for transformers for a project that's happening up in the business park. So it's some expansion of some buildings. So that would be the only concern I'd have, is that just from a timing perspective. But you're right. I don't know why those numbers are blacked out. I apologize.
All right. Okay, so that's a good point.
You want a motion?
I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with that, because it could be one price and he's blocked it out and it filled in a higher price, for instance.
It's strange that it's so black too.
Yes,
it's like it's not like pen. It's like redacted exactly.
Hey, no casting aspersions on our city staff over there. You behave, Mayor.
I should do that. Hey, I didn't call on you, so. All right. So
Probably just
I might entertain a motion to table this item until we get some clarification on the blacked out bits. Is it? What do you think?
Mayor, and that's great. I think that's probably a good thing to do at this point. And if it's something of a very, very timely manner, I wonder if we could maybe have Maria alter the agenda for Saturday. But I don't know that it is, and it probably can wait till May 3rd. But I don't think it's of the utmost timing. We try to be very responsive to development, and so that's always a concern. But I think we could probably wait in this instance.
And I'll make a motion that we table this until we get that clarified.
Okay.
Second the motion.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember Hanson and seconded by Councilmember Adams. Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
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 Okay. Motion passes 5-0. All right. So we have finished our consent agenda items. Thank you. All right, now we are going to move to our action items. An ordinance creating a new process for lot consolidations and lot line adjustments.
Sorry, Mayor, point of order, I guess. Did we vote? I know we voted on the individual items that we pulled out from the consent agenda. Did we vote on the whole?
Yes, we did.
We did. Okay, thank you.
It's a good thing. Sometimes that gets missed, so I'm glad you asked.
Especially for me.
Okay. All right. Who's presenting this? I'm sorry. Lyle, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so you may remember, Mayor and Council, again, it's been a while, but at the last meeting as a work item, we discussed the next two action items, and I'll separate them out individually. So action item A is regarding essentially when two property owners want to adjust a fence line. They're not creating a new lot. There's generally no building going on there. Or we see occasionally somebody owns multiple lots and they want to combine those together to have one big lot. That would be considered a lot consolidation. This ordinance addresses a new process to handle those that would allow staff to be the approval land use authority on those, therefore not requiring that it go to a public body. We still do the same checks to make sure it doesn't create illegal lots or setbacks as people are adjusting lines. And I think that's about the details of that one. So that's what this is representing, and looking for a vote regarding the ordinance as proposed.
Okay. Do we have any questions at this time? Oh, I'm sorry. I should indicate that usually at this point we would have public hearing, but we don't have anybody signed up for the public hearing. So now we'll just move into questions. Councilmember Hanson, did you have a question?
Just for clarification, and maybe this comes up on the next issue we're going to talk about, is there an appeal process? I mean, this is staff, but if somebody comes, a neighbor comes and says, I don't agree with this,
Yes, there is. So the ordinance is currently set up so that any decision regarding Title 17 or the land use ordinances made by staff then goes to the Planning Commission as the appeal authority currently. And essentially what they're looking at, subdivision in general is a little bit unique where the reason it's being looked at for this process is so administrative. If they meet requirements A, B, C, and D, then there's an obligation essentially to approve that. So the appeal would look more at the process, was it handled correctly, and or if there was an error made, not necessarily a popularity contest on whether the neighbors liked it or not. But they would have the right to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, I would now entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve action item A.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Adams, seconded by Councilmember Barber. Any more statements at this point? All right, let's go to a vote. Councilmember Hanson?
Aye.
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 All right, motion passes 5-0. Okay, an ordinance modifying the process for subdivision review and required subdivision amendments. Lyle.
Okay. Again, a similar modification proposed by this ordinance to the land use process. So these are ones where we're actually looking at subdividing property or creating new building lots, whether it be commercial or residential circumstances. Currently, when a developer or applicant comes into our office, we take in an application that's reviewed at the preliminary plat level, which is kind of the idea and concept, by the Planning Commission, who then passes a recommendation to you, the council, for a decision. Then it goes back for the final plat process, again, both through the Planning Commission and City Council. So 4 total meetings typically. Sometimes we're able to streamline that depending on if it's a 2-lot or something, a small amount of detail. The proposal before you is to eliminate a final step on that. So the Planning Commission would still be the recommending body on the preliminary plat. Typically that does with the road patterns and layout of a subdivision. And the City Council would be the final approval body of that preliminary plat process. And then as they go back, the final plat review is essentially the engineering and technical aspect of it. So it looks the same, the road patterns are the same number of lots, lot sizes. They're looking at the final plat process if they got the right pipes in and so forth. And so the proposal is to take that to the Planning Commission only, and they would be the final approval body on the final plat. The second component of this ordinance that's written involves the active transportation plan. So currently when development comes in, they get the privilege of installing the roads, curb, gutter, sidewalk, the components of their development. We do not have anything in our ordinances currently that would put requirements on them to put in improvements that are called out in our recent approved active transportation plan. Maybe an off-street path or a bike lane, just as applicable. So this gives us the ability to put that in as a requirement as part of their improvements and development process. And I think that covers it. So again, it's been through the public hearing and recommended by the Planning Commission, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. All right, at this point we would have a public hearing. Nobody has signed up for that, so we'll move on to questions from council. Okay. No questions? Yes, Councilmember Hans.
Sorry, that last one just caught me. The very last thing that we're changing to is just our active transportation plan. Just give us the ability now to incorporate those things into their plat when they submit it. Again, can you give me some examples? I think you said just like a bike lane.
Yeah, correct. So I think it was
and that's if we're putting bike lanes in the city. Like let's say we do one on Shepherd naturally, and then it comes by a new neighborhood that's connecting. Just add to it is what you're saying. Is that a good example?
Yeah, there will be components where trails and are probably more specifically what you're going to get out of this. Having some stripe of lane in the middle of a street that doesn't connect anything into anything may not work, but previously, even though we put the plan in place about 2 years ago, if someone were willing and wanted to include those elements as part of their subdivision, that was great. If they weren't willing and interested in doing that, we couldn't require it of them. And so we call for trails and other connections with the street, such as bike lanes. So they would then, this ordinance gives the city council the ability to require those of them, and they would have to incorporate them as part of the development and improvements.
Can I just further clarify? One example I like to use is Webb Lane, which is so narrow. Eventually, someday, that north side of Webb Lane will probably develop. And when it does, I think it might be neat to have it Angel Street and the rail trail connected with a trail as well. If we didn't have this ordinance passed, we could say, "Would you put a trail in?" They could say yes and do it out of the kindness of their heart. Now we can compel them and be a little bit more involved in the conversation that maybe it would be nice to have a trail there instead of a sidewalk where the people could use. So,
All right. Any other questions? Great. I would entertain a motion.
Well, I move that we approve the modification of the subdivision process and required improvements.
I'd second.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember Page and seconded by Councilmember Barber. Councilmember Page.
Aye.
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 Forcing that trail component, I'm not there yet. Nay.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes 4-1. Okay. Road fee ordinance. So this is an ordinance enacting Title IX, Chapter 2A of the Kaysville City Code and providing for an effective date. I'm sorry, are you presenting?
Yeah, that's okay.
Please.
This was mostly Nick and Dean and I just went over this quite extensively. We hope in this we captured, especially from the last meeting, those items that you were concerned about. We obviously didn't include a sunset provision. We tried to take that feedback and do what you asked us to do there. This ordinance does clarify who we would charge the road fee to, but it doesn't clarify how much. So this would set up the fund that we would have as a road fee, but the consolidated fee schedule, which is a resolution you pass each year, would then dictate how much those dollars are. And we would obviously go over that as part of the budget process extensively before enacting that as of the next fiscal year, July 1st. So this would be the ordinance that creates the fund. I hope you took the opportunity to read it. I think we covered everything in there that we hope to. We talk extensively about reporting back to the council on an annual basis in both deliverables as well as an accounting of the fund itself. And I just would look for some feedback from you and otherwise propose that you adopt this ordinance.
Okay, thank you. I will now open the public hearing on this, and the person we have signed up is David Saunders.
Hi, my name is Dave Saunders. I'm sure you're surprised to see me here today. Now, I apologize I was not able to attend the last City Council meeting, but I did get to watch it, and I appreciated the discussion that was held on it. There's one item in here that I think should be in here that is not, and that is and unfortunately this is going to burden Josh a little bit, and I apologize to him in the back there, but that would be the current condition of the roads. We know what it is, at least according to the LTAP report we have, but every year we make changes. I mean, we're funding things to be done, and those things are happening. I would like to see that analysis stays up to date. That provides us two things. One, it makes sure that when we look at it, we do so objectively. We're using facts, and it's staying in our mind, and it increases our awareness of what our real condition of our roads is. Is it good, bad, or somewhere in between? But if we don't have the current conditions, then we're just making guesses. Hopefully good guesses, but still just guesses. And then again, it increases our accountability when we take a good, objective look at what we have. So I would like to request that be added, and it would I would hope that it would contain an analysis of every single road in Kaysville. Is there anything needed for a given stretch? Does this one need to have anything done? Does it need sealing? Does it need crack, tar, pothole, rotomill, whatever it may happen to be, and a recommendation? That would give us a great understanding of just what the magnitude of the problem is that we still have. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Generally speaking, I wouldn't answer. I feel that we have covered this. 9-2A-5, billing and fund dedication. To ensure proper accountability, each year during the annual budget process, the City Council shall receive a report detailing the income and expenditures of the fund, including a detailed accounting of the road work performed during the previous 12-month period. And if we have an ongoing list, which we will have, then we can just update it as we go along. So I feel that I'm not going to have you come back up. So I feel that has been addressed in this document. All right. Questions specifically about this ordinance from our council members?
So this ordinance, we're voting to enact the ordinance.
Correct.
For the road fee. We're not actually voting on the specifics of the fee.
Shane?
Right. There is who is charged the fee, so that would be the only distinction. Who's charged the fee is in here, but you can charge someone in here $0 as well, so you could still completely change the amount of the fee.
Who we're able to charge them to. Okay.
All right.
And that's good clarification.
Okay.
Do we want to talk about the timeline of when the final budget will be laid out so people know?
Yes. Shane, do you want to address that?
The consolidated fee schedule is something we'll talk about at our first budget meeting Saturday and then ongoing as well. So it should be approved. I think our public hearing, the tentative budget should be approved the first meeting in May, which is our next meeting. And the public hearing is the first meeting in June on this, which would be part of that discussion if there's someone that has concerns with it. And then it would be approved the second meeting in June. So
okay.
to go into effect July 1st.
Okay, very good. Any other questions on this? Okay. Seeing no questions, I would entertain a motion at this time.
I'd make a motion that we would approve the ordinance for our road fee.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been motioned by Councilmember Barber, seconded by Councilmember Garn. Any more comments at this time? Okay. All right. Councilmember Garn?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes 3-2. All right. Now we will go to preliminary and final plat approval for the Deseret Complex condominium subdivision located at 450 South Deseret Drive. And who's presenting that? Andy, thank you.
This property is located down on Deseret Drive between Boondocks and the nursery. You may be aware there's a building under construction there. The request is to be able to, ultimately their plan is to build 4 buildings on the property. As I mentioned, the first one's under construction, which is on what's shown there is Lot 4. They'd like to be able to own the buildings individually under separate ownership. And the way to do that is to plat it as a commercial condominium type project. So the footprint of each building would be the separate lot. The parking lot and landscaping around those buildings would be held in common among the condominium association of each of the building owners. Again, this simply allows them to have separate ownership of each of the buildings. This plat's been recommended by the Planning Commission and complies with the ordinances, and we'd recommend approval.
Okay, thank you. We don't have anybody signed up for this. I do want to emphasize condominium can be confusing. There will not be individuals living here. These are business condominiums.
Merely the type of ownership.
Yes,
type of housing.
So we're clear on that. All right. Questions from council?
Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Hanson.
Does the condominium bugs me? Does it have to be named that? I mean, is that their chosen name?
No, again, that's just designates the type of ownership of the properties.
I'll get versed in that.
You'll get over it?
Well, I'll figure out if it's a definition, and I'll come back.
This isn't your condo in Deer Valley.
Hey. I didn't call on you. All right. All right. Any other comments?
This doesn't really change. Sorry, this doesn't really change the zoning. Anything? We don't need to make any changes to that. What's the actual change?
This is in a light industrial commercial zone. Sorry, one of them meets the zoning requirements. This is a commercial use. It does not allow for any residential uses on the property under the current procedure. This merely allows them to own the buildings under different ownership.
Okay.
No change to the zone. The zone is the same. They're just approving the plat, the way they've set up where they want to put the buildings and how many they want to put on there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mayor?
Councilmember Hanson?
And you don't need to, again, redraw lines. It's not going to be for, I just don't understand the legal entities behind it, but they can still own. I mean, I guess you don't have to subdivide. That's my question.
No, this is the subdivision. Currently, they own the entire parcel as one owner and one ownership. Once this plat's approved and recorded, each individual lot will be owned or could be owned under a separate name or individual or whatever. And the rest of the property would be owned in common. So it's merely just a type of ownership. So you could own this building, and Councilmember Page could own this one, and so forth. It wouldn't require, they could build all these same buildings without doing the plat, but it would have to remain under single ownership at that point.
So, Councilmember Hanson, the way these typically work is each one of those lots are in a commercial zone are built so that they can build the largest building possible, and then they grant cross-access easements to the other 4 lots. So what you have here is you have 4 separate tax IDs on that, and then the white area within the heavy black line, they will have a cross-access easement so that anybody can use that parking or the grass area or whatever, but you could sell each one of those buildings to somebody else. So this is, the lot is being subdivided. It's a kind of a unique, it happens frequently, but it's novel in the sense that most people don't think about that when they think about subdividing. But it is being subdivided. Those lots become islands, and they're given access easements, perpetual access easements, so that they can access the lots.
Got it. No, thank you for the clarification.
Okay. All right. I'd entertain a motion at this time.
Well, I move that we approve the preliminary and final plat for the Deseret Complex Condominium subdivision.
Second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Page, seconded by Councilmember Garn. Any other comments at this time? Councilmember Barber.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 5-0. Preliminary and final plat approval. Oops, I just did that one. I forgot to cross it out. Donation agreement for the water tank design. Shane?
Yes. We've been working with the applicant that has requested annexation into the city. This is the property east of 89 that you're familiar with there on the north end of our city. We have been working with them, and up to today, we have an agreement, an annexation agreement that we're pretty comfortable with, but the current owner's unwilling to sign that at this time. They're just worried about some of the obligations that they would have as part of this agreement. Normally, I think what we would do is we would wait for the land to change hands into the hands of the applicant. But in this case, because of the 89 construction, we're forced to move forward with relocating our water tank, and that water tank is part of this whole process. So what we've done here is we've created a donation agreement so the applicant can give the city money. In exchange, we are going to design the water tank to accommodate their development. If for some reason they don't annex the property, or they don't become the true owner of that property and it doesn't annex, we would be able to take their money and continue on with the design in the same place, or we could move it to a place that we would like to. As you probably know, we had planned on putting this water tank in a different location on Green Road, on property we own, but we're doing this to accommodate their potential annexation and potentially owning the property. So it's kind of a unique agreement. It's a little bit different. We have given them an August 1st, 2018 deadline as part of the agreement to annex and to own the property, and if that doesn't happen at that time, we will just take their money and reevaluate the design of the water tank and where we would locate that. So we feel like this holds the city harmless and it covers us from an expense perspective. I don't know if Nick has anything to add, and we also have at least Matt is here from the applicant to answer questions if you have any.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. So the city's not going to come out ahead with this. The developers have just agreed to donate the money to cover the cost of designing the tank on their property, so that in the event that this annexation agreement doesn't come to fruition, that the city hasn't expended resources on a piece of property that now is not in the city. I think that this is, and then I think the benefit for the developer is that should the annexation happen, they'll be credited for these costs, so they're not going to have to pay twice. They're going to get credits for these costs.
Okay, thank you. We don't have anybody signed up to comment on this at this point, so we'll go to questions from council.
Mayor.
Councilmember Hanson, just lighten it up today.
We had a lot of reading. This is just some wording and just some language that just concerned me, and it was, we expect to get reimbursed by UDOT. Is that? And that's what I read in my documents. Okay. It wasn't like we will be reimbursed, but we expect to be. Is there a risk there?
I don't think so. It's a great question, and it does lead me to something else I probably should have said, is that the timeline we're using today is because UDOT would like us to have a design that we can bid out, and then they can pay us on that design. Now, we don't have anything in writing with them, and we will have something in writing from UDOT, but we do need to get that design and present that to them so they know the true cost of what we're trying to replace. At that point, they will say, they have told us verbally they will pay for the replacement of a 1 million-gallon water tank. And essentially, they've told us verbally they would pay for everything that we have now, that we would be moving to a different location. So they've told us verbally exactly what we want to hear, but we actually need to go through that process of having it designed before they will put that in writing and then give us a check for whatever that amount is. Does that answer your question?
It does. Is there any historical risk? I haven't worked with UDOT personally, but
I feel very comfortable with it. I've appreciated them coming to us, and we're kind of trying to accommodate their timeline. They'd love to see this water tank in a new location before they even start the 89 project. So we're trying to accommodate them as well, so I feel like there's a real nice mutual benefit in working together, and so far I'm feeling really good about it. Now, one way or the other, we're going to have to relocate this water tank. So if they've said they would do it, we wouldn't unplug it until we have a check in hand from them. And if we're uncomfortable with that, we will continue to discuss until we're comfortable with it.
Thank you.
Okay. All
Another question.
Councilmember Barber.
So does the size of the water tank have to change pending the new use that will be up there?
We're trying to, that'll be part of the design process to see how much we should use there. It'll probably, there are going to be more users, but if we had to put in a 1 million gallon tank, it would probably actually make a bigger difference on the next tank we put in 10 or 15 years, probably a build out tank. And so this will not accommodate us for the future, for all time, but I think our next tank probably will, and so that's kind of exciting. That'll also be borne out in the capital facilities plan that we're currently underway. That will also tell us if that's what the next tank size might be, and maybe what this one should be as well.
Okay, interesting.
Mayor, can I add
Yes, Councilmember Hanson.
Just with that said, and just how long do these tanks last? What's their useful life? And this is more, again, not a city question.
They're usually designed for 75 to 100 years life, as long as they're maintained appropriately. Most of our tanks in town were built in the early 50s. So this tank in particular that will be taken out by the 89 project is probably, as far as I recall, it's the oldest tank we have in our system. But I think the design life,
still a wonderful tank.
Yeah. Very, very valuable.
Very valuable tank.
And what's its current capacity? Is it 1 million gallons? So it's just really right now this would just be a straight replacement.
Tank, yes.
And that, again, just as to think about cost savings, at build out, do we have any idea what we're going to, but you think that's 15 years down the road?
I do, and I don't know if you disagree with me, but I think at least 10 years would probably be fine with our current capacity.
Our current capital facility plan says that build out we need about 10.5 million gallons of storage. We currently have 8.5 million. If UDOT takes this tank out, that leaves us at 7.5, and we need 2.5, 3 million at build out.
And maybe I'm not as concerned. Is this something you build one right next to it, or on green, you'd build, like we don't take this one offline because it'll still be useful in 10 to 15 years. We just add extra capacity. Am I saying that right?
I think so. I mean, we need what we have now, and we are open to going bigger as well. Maybe we put in 2 million gallon tank today to accommodate a little bit in the future, but we don't want to go too much and expend too much now, and we're just unsure.
We don't have the people to support it yet.
And I hope the design process bears a lot of that out.
All right, thank you.
Okay. I would now entertain a motion on this item.
I'll move to approve the donation agreement for the water tank design.
I'll second.
It's been motioned by Councilmember Garn and seconded by Councilmember Page. Any further comments? Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. All right, then we are going to approval of a contract with Sunrise Engineering to design a new city water tank. And that would be Andy.
Based on the discussion we just had, the city has put out requests for proposal for design of the water tank. We received 5 proposals. We reviewed those, met with the top couple firms, and have determined that Sunrise Engineering would be the best suited to do this project at this time for the city. We met with them. They've given us a proposal. You've seen that. Their proposal is at $42,000. That would take it from where we stand now through the bidding process. We would then renegotiate with them or some other company for any assistance we may need during construction. But their contract is for $42,000 to get us all the way through, to get a contractor online.
Okay. All right. Nobody signed up to speak to this issue, so we'll move on to council questions. Councilmember Hanson?
I do have one.
Yeah.
Did you include, and again, this isn't calling, did we have those bids? Usually seems like we have like a 4 layout. Did I miss that in the packet?
When we do professional services, we don't do it strictly by cost. We do it by
Okay, they meet the definition.
professional experience and qualification.
Fair, okay. I remember that now. Got it.
Okay. Okay, I would take a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion that we approve the contract with Sunrise Engineering to design the water tank.
Second?
All right, it has been moved by Councilmember Barber and seconded by Councilmember Garn. Any other comments? All right, Councilmember Hanson.
Aye.
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 I prefer it be bid. Nay.
Okay, the motion passes 4-1. Okay, now an ordinance adjusting the common boundary between Kaysville City and Farmington City and annexing 0.69 acres of real property into Kaysville City because we're cooler. That wasn't in there. I added that. All right.
I'll be brief on the introduction, but if you do want more details, let me know. We previously held the public hearing prior to the initiation of the council meeting this evening. This is the property you can see on the screen, currently in Farmington City. We've passed a resolution to consider it, done the noticing, and held the public hearing this evening. To what you have before you is the ordinance that would, from our side, make it official. It is worth noting it's a two-part process, so even though you approve it, Farmington City still also has to pass an ordinance. We then take those documents to the recorder's office to finalize everything. They're in the process still of running it through their system, but I'm told from their staff it's moving forward, but we're ahead of them on our meeting schedule, so we'll be the first to consider it. With that, I'll pass it back to the council for any questions for myself.
Okay. We don't have anybody signed up to speak to this issue, so we'll go to questions from council.
I already asked my question.
Okay.
Out of line.
It's been pretty well vetted at this point. Seeing no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Maybe just one. Are we getting all of the frontage, curb and gutter? All of the Kaysville City frontage, it will all be curb and gutter?
Correct.
Good question. Excellent. All right. I am.
I move that we approve an ordinance adjusting the common boundary between Kaysville City and Farmington City and annexing 0.69 acres of real property into Kaysville City.
I'll second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Any more comments? Seeing none. Councilmember Page.
Aye.
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 All right. It passes 5-0. All right. We have completed our action items for the evening. We're moving on to our work items.
Can I get clarification?
Yes, you may.
Simple. Back on D. So that condominium plat, there's already a building there. Is that building on another plat, or did we just retro approve?
That one got subdivided as Lot 4.
Would be that building, correct?
That's where the building's going,
That's where it's built.
and it's being built, yes. And so they're just platting the footprint of that building so that it can be separated as well. The fact that it's commercially zoned allows for more than one building on an individual. They could build those 4 buildings on the existing piece of property as it sits, and that would still be legal.
So they're just changing their original plat because that building's already there, right? So we approved that last year.
No, there was no council approval required to build a legal building on a legally existing lot. So that building just went through the building permit process, staff approval. Now that they're subdividing the property, that does require council approval until tomorrow when the new ordinances take effect.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
Thanks, Andy.
All right. Let's move on to our work agenda. First is IPA resolutions.
I hope each of you have read these resolutions. They are brutal. Did you read them, right? You said you did. I don't know if you... Okay. The Intermountain Power Plant is down in Delta, Utah. Some of you have probably seen that plant. We're a member of that plant. And as you probably know, I hope you're aware, at least lately, that over the last 5 or 6 years, they've been working to convert this plant from coal-fired to gas. The 90-something% of the users for that plant are California, so they use that energy and they're no longer interested in our coal. So it's been controversial, it's been hard, it's been a terrible struggle. Fortunately or unfortunately, I've been involved in this from the beginning because my previous city was also a member of this same project. So we're here at the point, we're kind of in here in the tail end of this project. We've been asked by the IPA board to approve the two resolutions that you have there with you. They're very technical in nature. I went to a meeting a couple weeks ago where they talked about it for an afternoon, and it really boiled down to me that they wanted to clarify how big the plant would be in generation, and they also, I think they kind of there are a lot of other little things that they did to clean up some of the previous actions that our council has taken. But they also gave Bruce some power to make some minor decisions also in that. And there are a few other things in there as well. We're in a work meeting. We're happy to answer some questions about this project. The IPA board has vetted this from a legal perspective as well, as we had Nick read those documents, and I think he feels comfortable with those and could talk more about them if we need to. So I guess the recommendation would be to move this to the action of the next agenda, but we're happy to talk about these extensively.
Okay. And also, I like that our power board has looked at this as well.
Great. Thank you, Mayor.
Like
it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Really good point.
All right. Any questions about this?
Just
yes.
One, Mayor, if I would.
Of course.
Actually, never mind. Just one. Why a capacity reduction?
I think they put it out to the members to say, do you want to go with gas? And I think a lot of the members have kind of, over the past 4 or 5 years, have tried to make other arrangements for resources as well, so they wouldn't be dependent upon this. It's going to be a great resource. It's a really exciting project in that we can lay off the power or take it back as we need it. I think we have a 6-month window to do that. So if we're going to have in the past, Kaysville's used it to take, in the summer months, we've taken some of the power and used it ourselves, and then in the winter months, we've given it back to California. So it's kind of a neat, interesting project. Not all of them are like that. So it's also going to be relatively inexpensive as well, even though right now it's very inexpensive. So I think just over the vetting process, and as we've transferred or tried to change it from coal to gas, we've just lost some of the customers, and they've just downsized it accordingly. So,
good. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilmember Garn.
I had essentially the same question. I'm just interested on, because it's about 40% of coal production, if I looked at the numbers correctly real quick. And so when you say lose customers, California customers, is there less demand from California? Or
no, I think it's more of the Utah customers have gotten less and taken less. Some of them didn't want to move on to this next stage, and so they've had a couple of rounds of, okay, does everybody want their current allotment? And then I think most people said yes, but some didn't, and then they backed it off and they said, okay, does anyone want their allotment? I think it's kind of gone that direction.
So the California percentage stayed, or demand stayed relatively constant?
I think it did. We might have lost, there's 3 big users down there. We might have lost one of the cities, now that I'm thinking about it. It might have been Anaheim, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But the LA Public Power is still heavily involved.
Thank you.
Just one comment. I actually have a
point of order.
Oh, excuse me.
Yes, Councilmember Page.
Yeah. For me.
Yeah, it took me by surprise. Go ahead.
Okay. Just a comment. I actually have a relative that works there, and they have been reduction of power forever. And I mean, he really felt that the day's coming they were going to just shut this right down, and they've laid off a lot of people. So this isn't surprising that they're doing this.
All right, thank you.
Mayor?
Councilmember Adams.
So in lieu of greater conversations around this topic, is it wise to be doing this at this time? Anything to do with our power company?
You know, I think that this is what we're going to, I think it's important that we tidy this up and move on. Yeah, absolutely. I will entertain a motion to move this to a action item.
For the record, I wasn't done, but that's okay. Go ahead.
That's okay, yep.
We understand why.
Yeah, I move that we move this to this IPA resolution to a work meeting.
Okay, action.
Or I mean, to an action.
Okay, thank you. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Councilmember Garn.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 4-1. All right, now Human Resource Manual review.
I'm very excited to bring this to you. Unlike the previous item, I would love it if you just move this to another work item, but I'd love to talk about it tonight as well. It's been more than a year in the making, and we've made a lot of changes to the Human Resource Manual over the past year. It's been meeting with department heads and a lot of work by Mr. Story in our office, and I think we're just really excited about what we've put together. Nick also coming in at the perfect time as far as hiring him and making him be very involved in a lot of the legal aspects of it. He's vetted this out very well as well. So I know this is your first crack at it. It's a big document. I outlined in the staff report several things that I kind of wanted to just point out to you, but there are many, many changes in there. So I'd encourage you all to read it and to ask questions and allow us the opportunity to either answer those tonight or over the next coming weeks. I lost my train of thought. I apologize. I had one more thing to say about the manual. Oh, I guess one of the things I'm very excited about is also rolling this manual out. So once you all adopt it, I'm excited to take this to the staff to discuss with them how important it is that we adhere to this, that this is your policy manual if there's something you're doing that's not in this manual, then we need to discuss that. And so they'll have some clear guidelines of behavior and deporting themselves on a daily basis. So I'm really excited about that. So,
questions?
Mayor?
Councilmember Hanson.
Just as I read over it, something you wanted to do, take this back and read through it extensively. I think you pointed out the areas. How do you want that feedback given to you? Just between now and then? Do you want it brought up when it becomes an action item?
I think between now and then is good. I don't want to be accused of deliberating outside of a meeting, so I'm happy to have that discussion during meetings as well. But if you have questions, I think if we can answer those in between meetings as well, or at least explain what the thought processes was, then you can have a better understanding of it. But it's different than most of our agenda items in that it's just a long document. And I don't know if any of you had reviewed our previous policy manual. So I think it's maybe really starting from scratch for most of you, so I understand that. We've kind of lived, eat, and breathe this document for over a year now. So I'm happy to take as much time as you need. Anything we can get done in the next couple of months is going to be great for the city staff at least. So,
okay. Councilmember Garn.
At the risk of opening Pandora's box here,
why
would
not?
it be possible to provide a red line version so we could see what the changes were from the previous manual? I wouldn't want you to create it, but if you had one, I guess, then maybe that's
yeah.
You know, I think it's been a while since the city's updated their policy manual. I think the revisions were so extensive that I think you'd be mostly red lines throughout the document.
As an alternative, could you send us the previous version?
Yeah, for sure with that, and I think I could dig up several iterations of it over the past few months. I remember saving it as like April 2018, so I know that we've done that several times. So I'm happy to send all those out. I'll do that to the entire council.
Speaking just for myself, I think the original version when you started out and the end product would be sufficient without all the drafts.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I have one more question.
Yes, Councilmember Barber.
So just as clarification for my benefit, what role do you look for our body to give in this? It seems really administrative what you're doing here.
Go ahead.
I think you're exactly right, and I think the reason that this is before you is that the state code specifically requires that the city council
by resolution, approve personnel policies.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add to that, Mayor? I'm
Yes,
so sorry.
yes.
Just, and I think that as you set the policies, we would administer the policies. So if you want your, I'm trying to think of a good example. If you want your staff to be drug tested on a daily basis, we can do that. And then we would administer the not personally, but we'd have those done. So that's really what I think is the difference. You set the policy and
There's
we
the
administer the
policies
policy.
in here.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hanson.
Just a clarification too, it almost sounded like, do you want this moved to another work meeting and then to an action item? I mean, I heard a couple months.
That's what I think would be good. I think I'd like to see us go slow and really vet this thing through. I think we'd have a better manual at the end if we did it that way.
Good, thank you.
Okay. I will entertain a motion at this time. Councilmember Hanson.
I'll move that we move this item to another work item in a month out.
All right.
Seconds.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Hanson and seconded by Councilmember Garn. Councilmember Barber.
Aye.
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 All right, motion passes 5-0. All right, water meter purchase. Would be Josh? Shh, he's sleeping.
Wake up, Josh.
Hey, we're going really fast. You didn't expect to be up so soon, I'm sure.
Mayor, can I ask one? I don't know if this is appropriate or not. No, please, Josh, stay there. But as we gave our agenda items, we stayed seated. Would you prefer that we get up as well? I know we've done that and not done that. Would you? Okay.
I would.
I would tell Lyle and Andy that. And Andy's probably going to give me a crusty look.
He's going to give me the stink eye some more.
I just wanted to get that clarification. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
So right here.
That's perfect.
So thank you, Mayor and Council. I am here tonight on behalf of the Water Department within Public Works to present some information that has been previously talked about somewhat as we've gone through the AMI presentations touching on water and power. In the staff report provided, we've provided some background and context of the water meters currently in Kaysville City, and attached was kind of a flow chart of the current process of collecting the billing data. For the last 2.5 years, Public Works has kind of put a halt at the request of the council on the mass installation or transition to newer, I'm terming them digital water meters, but water meters that essentially something that's more robust and dependable than what we're seeing elsewhere in the city, something that offers the ability to have the AMI functionality in collecting that data. And also really just I think kind of a vision of Public Works. I can't speak to other departments, but sometimes I feel like we're in the Neolithic or Dark Ages with some things, and we want a current, more up-to-date process that's efficient, cost-effective, and better serves the needs of our residents. Some of the notes that we've got here, I don't know if you want me to go through all of the attachments, but on that vein of kind of our vision, we want our data and our assets, the things that we have at our disposal to work for us, to work for the residents, for their benefit, rather than vice versa, where we are kind of band-aiding things along of, yeah, it works, but does it make sense? Is it cost-effective? Is it the correct choice? So what we are proposing is, currently we have about 2,300 of the roughly 8,000 connections culinary water connections in Kaysville that are using this newer meter that we transitioned to about 4 years ago. That was a rather thorough and time-consuming process that the water department went through at the time. Took about 6 months meeting with vendors, meeting with cities that use various meters, and collecting instrumentation. We settled on the meter that we wanted to use. It's manufactured by Neptune. It's called the T10, and it's got some components in it, particularly the radio, that we've been quite impressed with. In the 4 years since we identified the meter, we've seen tremendous and phenomenal results with the meter, particularly as we look at what was in the ground previous versus these being in the ground the last 4 years. As we talked this morning, roughly, I think about 10 of those new meters we've sent back over the last 4 years for various repairs, versus at least 400 to 500 of the pre-existing meters that were in the ground in that same 4 year period. Granted, some of those meters are quite a bit older, some in the 40 to 50-year-old range. There are various opinions within the water and secondary water communities amongst water professionals where they say, you know, a water meter life on the low end, and this was surprising, Water Tech said an average is 8.2 years. I think that's extremely low, more on the 20 or maybe even 25-year range. But what we are seeing consistency is people saying that after 16 years, you're going to start noticing some noticeable decrease in the accuracy and efficiency of that meter, meaning we are providing more water to a resident or to a connection than we are accurately billing and being compensated for. So as a resident, I know my meter is probably 40 to 50 years old. And as a resident, I love that. Like, well, this is really cool.
That's free water right there.
Yeah. So kind of exciting, but as staff, not cool. So again, the proposal is, as we have received a quote from MeterWorks, who is the vendor for Neptune, is discuss this in this meeting, move it to an action item before a price increase takes effect on May 11th, and commit to a PO of $1.5 million for the purchase of the remaining 5,700 meters, the option to install those meters, and the installation of data collectors and software necessary to provide the AMI functionality. So, yeah, with that, I'll kind of turn it over to the council for questions, deliberation.
All right. Councilmember Hanson isn't jumping out of his seat yet, so I know it's not him. Councilmember Garn.
So, just to clarify, I try not to ask questions that I already know the answer to, but maybe I'll just be allowed one. This is coming out of the Water Enterprise Fund?
Correct.
So I don't know how much, though.
All of the funds are coming from the enterprise funds in the water department. There's no general funds or stormwater funds or any other source of funding. The last, let me see here, since 2016, I'll say, we have had almost $900,000 in unused funds of those enterprise funds. Due to us holding on mass installation. So those were items that we budgeted for that we didn't end up spending those funds. Ended up going into what I'll just, in layman's terms, call reserves. That $900,000 is about 60% of the funds that we're requesting. I think we have anywhere between $2.5 and $3 million in that reserves for water. So
So do you feel comfortable with after this expenditure with the remaining reserves?
I do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
More discussion. Okay. I would like to entertain a motion to move this to an action agenda item.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Garn, seconded by Councilmember Page. Any other comments? Great. Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 5-0. All right.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to move to our call to the public, and we have David Saunders.
In reference to the water meters that were just talked about, I didn't hear anything about what the return on investment of those water meters would be. Since they are our funds, my question that I would like to see answered before it's taken as an action item or during the action item is to see how long will it take to pay back the cost of those meters. I mean, $1.5 million is a sizable chunk of money, and it's coming out of my pocket. Is it worth it? How long is it going to be worth it? I would like those questions addressed. That was my first point. My second question or comment, I'm glad I'm not the only person who didn't get I watched the tape of the last meeting, and I'm glad I'm not the only one who missed the sign-up before on Call to Public, so I just thought that was a little humorous, but I appreciate, Mayor Witt, that you announced that ahead of time so that way anyone could participate, so I thought that was a great solution to the problem. And then my third point is back on the road fee, the Section 925A that you quoted it was referring to past performance, and my statement was about current conditions or future expectation, and I think that is something that is missing from the current ordinance. I do know that it was written in there for past performance, and I think that was good, but I think it was also missing the future aspect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Now we're going to go to council member reports, and I'm going to go first because we're going to have a proclamation on Arbor Day. So that I should have done earlier. Okay, so the proclamation is for Arbor Day, April 28th, 2018, whereas Kaysville City, Utah, has committed considerable time and resources to the urban forest and has chosen to set aside a special day for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day is observed in every state in the Union throughout the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of topsoil, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife, and whereas trees in our city increase the property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify the community, and whereas wherever they are planted, trees are a source of joy and spiritual mental renewal. Now, therefore, I, Katie Witt, Mayor of Kaysville City, do hereby proclaim April 28th, 2018 as Arbor Day. I also urge all citizens to report efforts to protect our trees and woodlands and to support our urban forestry program. Further, I encourage all citizens to plant trees to gladden hearts and promote the well-being of present and future generations. So there we go. All right, and I will just note that some trees are really messy. Be careful which ones you plant. All right. And I also want to recognize, have we met since the Chevron incident? I don't think we have. No. And Councilmember Page referenced this in the invocation, but this council is very appreciative of the efforts not only of our police our fire and all the responding agencies that came to our assistance on, it was April 6th. Anyway, and we still have our officer in the hospital at this time, and expect he'll probably be there a couple more weeks, but really appreciate the efforts expended on our behalf. So thank you. All right. Can I have a report? How's Youth Council going?
Youth Council is going really well. We have a new mayor that was just appointed, so we'll be working forward to that. Speaking of the police and Chevron incident, they did a great job organizing and putting together a thank you to our police force, and hopefully continued efforts on that. And they have supported at all of our events. We've had them at the Sesquicentennial and the Easter egg hunt, and they'll be working 4th of July. Yeah, they do a great, it's just a mock council just like this so that they meet as. So yeah, I really like working with them, and we have very promising next generation.
That's great. How about Youth Court? How are we doing at Youth Court?
Nothing to report, but as I don't have teaching in the evenings, I'll be going to Youth Court going forward. So,
all right.
And I'll have better reports going forward.
Okay, super. How about Public Works?
Yeah, I'll just, nothing really new, but I would just mention, and correct me if I get anything wrong here, but as far as the LTAP report that Mr. Saunders mentioned with the current condition of every road, I believe that software, we got to keep that or purchase that same software, so we'll be able to continually update the condition of the roads as they're worked on, and know at any point in time, real time, what the condition of the roads are. So that will be a great benefit in the future, I think, to that point. And again, I just appreciate the Public Works Department. Many times I think they're under-resourced when emergencies happen, particularly during the winter. We had a little milder winter this time, but when you've got 5 people to do all the snow plowing and also all the water repairs, and sometimes older water, sometimes they work very long hours, and I'm very appreciative of what they do for us as well. Thank you.
Okay. Community development.
Yeah, let me just mention, this kind of has to do with the LPC, which I'm on the committee. I actually went through on a boring night and wrote down, we had 66 bills that were passed by the state legislature that will directly influence or affect our city. And I'm just glad that we have a city attorney and others that look into these kind of things to make sure we're in compliance. Sometimes I wish they would take a recess for a whole year. It'd sure make it a lot easier for cities sometimes. But it's amazing to me how much things change, and how policies change, and it seems like they pass a bill and then they turn around and change it again the next year to fix the little tweaks in it. And so I'm so glad for staff to understand that this is a tough deal to stay on top of these things.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Also, I should mention that next week is the Utah League of Cities and Towns conference in St. George, and I believe Councilmember Page and myself and Councilmember Barber are going to be going down this time, and also our city manager. So we're going to be getting some training on how we can do a better job, hopefully. So just want to let everybody know about that. And I think that's all. I would welcome a motion to adjourn. Yes.
Parks and Rec.
Oh, I did forget Parks and Rec. I'm so sorry.
Just great events that we've had recently, and looking forward to 4th of July specifically, and the change of venue that we appreciate everybody's support in moving to Barnes Park. It's going to be a great event, and if anybody has interest, we are looking for more volunteers. So.
Okay. Thank you. Now I would take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. Noted, it's 8:49.
Whoa.